So we are going to be talking about the movie Outlaws, which comes out from High Flyers Entertainment at the beginning of April of 2017. However, it was released in Mexico under the name For Greater Glory, the true story of Cristiada. And that was in 2012. And it actually focuses on a real-life event that actually happened in Mexico just under 100 years ago. And it's an event that I had no idea that actually even happened. So it's quite a bit of an eye-opener, this movie, and it's quite a shocking thing. It's one of those things where the truth is stranger than fiction. You can't actually believe this kind of thing happens in a country like Mexico, basically. Now, the story focuses on this government, the Mexican government, and they decide that they kind of want to stamp out religion, basically, within the country, because it's kind of having too much kind of influence on the people, ultimately, and the government at the time are kind of an atheist government. And so they start to kind of basically start shutting down any overt displays of religion. People can't wear crucifixes, they can't kind of, do anything basically out in public that kind of involves religion, and ultimately come to the point where they're actually executing priests and things like that. This inevitably kind of riles the people's backs up, and ultimately becomes a kind of revolutionary force led by Andy Garcia, who is himself actually a atheist, but believes people should have the right to practice religious freedom. And essentially it becomes like a civil war between the government and the military versus this kind of like this band of outlaws, ultimately, who are just kind of common folk who are kind of banding together to try and fight back and be able to practice the religion how they want. Now, when I first watched this film, I was kind of thinking, it's just going to be one of those kind of like church-funded pictures that are kind of like almost religious propaganda. If it was, it doesn't feel like that. This does feel like just a kind of quite a good dramatic depiction of a real-life event. So if you're adverse to kind of religious films, I wouldn't worry about it. You'll just kind of be able to watch this film fine without kind of feeling that you're being bashed over the head with it. Now, let's get any criticism I have out the way with it. First thing for me is the music here. The music was an odd choice. It sounds like science fiction music. It reminds me of kind of James Horner's like Battle Beyond the Stars, a little bit like Kroll or Beastmaster. It doesn't fit with the kind of the dramatic, serious tone of this film. So the music for me was a little bit of an odd choice. Second thing for me was action sequences were a largely bloodless affair, and since this is such a kind of a tragic real life event, it kind of takes the teeth out of it a little bit, and it almost feels like you're kind of watching a Saturday action TV show, basically, where people are kind of just don't show any wounds and things like that. And there is a subplot involving a real life person. I got this little lad called Jose, basically, who ends up being somewhat of a kind of, I guess, a mascot almost for the kind of the revolutionary side. And there's something that he does towards the end of the film which has some significance. But prior to that, I felt like he was a little bit inserted into the plot a little bit too much, and I almost felt like his scenes were a little over melodramatic, and it's like he just happens to be involved with every kind of major player almost for no real reason other than the fact that the story deems that's what he has to do. And there's plenty of other kind of kids on this kind of rebel side, but really only seems to focus on him for no other reason than the end result of what happens to him. So that I didn't think was particularly well handled, but that's a relatively small part of the film. Now, this is a tragic yet compelling true story, and I've got to say I was very impressed with this film. It's, I don't think it's a massive budget film, but they do a good job of making it feel kind of like grand scale and epic, I've got to say. It's got quite a good cast here as well. You've got Oscar Isaac, you've got Andy Garcia, you've got Peter O'Toole in obviously a small role. Obviously he's passed away. He does look rather sickly in this film, I've got to say. So it's got a pretty decent cast here. And it's, it's a sprawling, I don't want to say adventure film because it kind of takes away from the seriousness of the actual subject matter itself, but it is a quite exciting film to watch. There are lots of kind of battle sequences. I think the characters are very dynamic. I think Andy Garcia was quite good in this role, and he makes a very a commanding screen presence. So it does actually make it quite a thrilling movie to watch, and especially it's so shocking because you know that obviously there's a kind of something that's really happened basically. So I should just say I kind of quite enjoyed this one. I thought it was very well made. A few little niggles here and there, but ultimately this was a quality film. Maybe not the highest budget production. I feel it could have done with a little bit more money in it, and ultimately if it had kind of bared its teeth a little bit more in regards to some of the violence, I feel it would have kind of been that much more shocking ultimately. As it is though, it is an entertaining but very kind of informative movie that I feel you would be invested in and compelled to see what happens. So overall, I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.